When 68-year-old Margaret stood in her cluttered dining room, staring at 45 years of possessions, she felt like the walls were closing in. The moving van was arriving in just 48 hours, her adult children were thousands of miles away with their own families, and her energy was dwindling after years of managing a home filled with memories. The weight of a lifetime's worth of stuff was crushing her spirit. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Not only did Margaret clear her entire 4-bedroom home in 2 days, but she emerged feeling lighter, freer, and more excited about her future than she had in decades. Her secret? 7 brutal decluttering hacks that shatter every myth you've been told about clearing out your home. The best part? These hacks are designed for seniors, working even if you're overwhelmed, exhausted, or convinced you don't have time to start. I'm going to walk you through Margaret's exact system because what she discovered will revolutionize how you approach decluttering forever. So, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for weekly senior-focused hacks like this video to help others find it, and drop a comment below sharing your biggest decluttering obstacle, whether it's sentimental items, lack of energy, or not knowing where to start. I read every comment, and your story could inspire someone else to take that first step. Margaret was no neat freak. Far from it. After losing her partner of 40 years, her home had become a shrine to the past, a museum of memories she couldn't bear to touch. Every corner held remnants of her life as a teacher, a mother, a wife, and a community volunteer. Does that sound familiar? Maybe you're holding on to your own collection of sentimental items, or perhaps you're drowning in practical things you might need someday. Here's why Margaret's story is so powerful. She didn't spend months agonizing over every item, like most decluttering experts suggest. Instead, she used 7 unconventional, no-nonsense hacks tailored for seniors grappling with decades of possessions, limited physical stamina, and deep emotional ties to their belongings. By the end of this video, you'll have Margaret's step-by-step playbook, practical, hard-hitting strategies that deliver results fast without the fluff or feel-good platitudes. But here's the thing that blew me away. Margaret didn't just declutter her home, she decluttered her life, opening the door to a vibrant new chapter. Let's dive into her system, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to join our community of seniors ready to reclaim their space and their future. Hack 1. The Brutal Sort Method. Margaret's first hack is called the Brutal Sort Method. Inspired by battlefield medics who make split-second, life-or-death decisions under pressure. Just like medics don't have time to debate every case, you can't afford to agonize over every possession. This hack saved Margaret from the indecision that had kept her trapped for 3 years after her partner's passing. Here's how it works. In just 10 minutes per room, divide everything into 3 categories. Category 1, must keep. Absolute essentials like medications, important documents, or that one teapot you use daily. Category 2, maybe, the danger zone where most people stall out. Category 3, haven't used in a year. Automatic toss, no exceptions, no excuses. Here's the brutal twist that makes this method so effective. Treat maybe like toss. Margaret realized that maybe is just fear masquerading as practicality, and fear will keep you buried in clutter forever. She started in her kitchen, the heart of her home, where necessity is easiest to judge. In 10 minutes, she sorted through 19 teacups when she only drinks coffee now, 4 sets of pots from her days catering church events, and a waffle iron she hadn't touched since 1995. She kept her favorite coffee mug, a chipped, cheerful yellow one her daughter painted in 3rd grade, donated the teacups to a local charity, and tossed the waffle iron, which hadn't even worked in years. The speed of the process forced her to trust her instincts, and the results were immediate. A kitchen that felt open and functional for the first time in a decade. But the real breakthrough came when she applied this to her dining room. Margaret had 12 tablecloths, some still in their original packaging from the 1980s, and 3 sets of silverware for a family that no longer gathered for big holiday meals. She kept 1 tablecloth for small gatherings, donated the rest, and felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The emotional shift was profound. She realized that holding on to things just in case wasn't making her feel secure. It was making her feel trapped, anxious, and overwhelmed every time she opened a cabinet. The brutal sort method gave her permission to let go of indecision, and each room she tackled made her more confident to be even more ruthless with the next. Objection. What if I don't have 48 hours to declutter? No problem, this method works just as well if you spread it over a week or even a month. Just tackle one room or even one corner at a time. The key is to make quick decisions and stick to them. What's your biggest maybe category? Kitchen gadgets, old clothes, or stacks of papers? Drop it in the comments, and let's name it to tame it. Hack 2. The 8-minute blitz. Margaret's second hack saved her from the exhaustion that derails most decluttering attempts before they gain momentum. Seniors have limited emotional energy, about 8 minutes before decision fatigue sets in and every choice feels overwhelming. Margaret discovered that after this threshold, she'd start keeping everything just to avoid the mental strain of deciding. So, she set an 8-minute timer for each small area. Not a whole room, but a single drawer, a closet shelf, or a bathroom cabinet. When the timer buzzed, she stopped, even if she wasn't finished. This single rule transformed decluttering from a grueling marathon into manageable sprints. Here's why it worked. In 8 minutes, you can't overthink. You're forced to trust your gut. Margaret started with her bathroom cabinet, a chaotic mess of expired products and forgotten items. In one 8-minute blitz, she tossed lotions from 2001, 6 half-used shampoo bottles, and a hairdryer that sparked ominously the last time she tried it. She filled an entire trash bag and reclaimed space she'd forgotten existed. The next blitz was her bedside table drawer, stuffed with old reading glasses, expired coupons, and a dozen pens that didn't write. In another 8 minutes, she kept one good pair of glasses and tossed the rest, creating a drawer that felt calm and useful. The genius of this hack is in the stopping. By pausing while she still had energy and mental clarity, Margaret avoided the burnout that had paralyzed her for years. She actually started looking forward to her next 8-minute session, turning decluttering into a series of small victories. By the end of day 1, she'd completed 20 sessions, over 2.5 hours of focused, productive work without feeling drained or overwhelmed. She took breaks to make tea, call her daughter, or simply rest, which kept her refreshed and energized for the next sprint. Margaret found that this approach worked especially well in her living room, where she had 22 throw pillows for a couch that seated 8 Afghans despite keeping her thermostat at 74 degrees, and a collection of dusty figurines she hadn't noticed in years. Each 8-minute blitz tackled one small area, a shelf, a side table, making the room feel lighter with every session. Objection. What if I can't focus for 8 minutes? No worries. Try 5 minutes or even 3. The key is short, focused bursts that feel doable, no matter your stamina. Do you try to tackle entire rooms at once and end up quitting? Share in the comments how that approach has worked or not worked for you. I bet Margaret's burnout story will feel all too familiar. Hack 3. The outsider test. The third hack is brutal, but absolutely brilliant. Margaret imagined a complete stranger sorting through her belongings after she was gone, asking one simple question: would they think I'm a hoarder, or would they understand why I kept this? This mental shift stripped away the emotional fog of guilt, nostalgia, and obligation, letting her see her possessions with crystal clarity. She started with her collection of 15 vases from her flower arranging hobby, a passion she hadn't pursued in over a decade. Would a stranger keep vases for a hobby that no longer exists? No. They donate them to someone who loves flowers. Out, they went to a local community center. Her sentimental items were a bigger challenge: boxes of her kids' old report cards, spelling bee certificates, and school projects. Would a stranger keep 30 years of C's and B's or faded construction paper art? Obviously not. She kept one special report card per child, her son's first A in math, her daughter's glowing teacher comments, and let the rest go without guilt. This hack worked miracles in her closet. Margaret had 12 winter coats for a town with mild winters, some unworn since her teaching days. A stranger wouldn't keep a dozen coats for occasional chilly days. They'd donate them to a shelter where they'd be used daily. She kept one warm jacket and donated the rest, feeling lighter with every decision. The emotional breakthrough came when she realized that holding on to items out of guilt wasn't honoring her past. It was stealing space from her present. She applied the outsider test to her garage, where she found old camping gear from family trips 20 years ago. A stranger wouldn't keep tents with broken zippers for a woman who no longer camps. She donated them to a scout troop, imagining kids enjoying new adventures. Objection. What if I'm too attached to let go of sentimental items? Start with less emotional areas, like the kitchen or bathroom, to build confidence before tackling memory-heavy spaces. What item in your home would a stranger toss without a second thought? Magazines, extra dishes, or outdated electronics? Drop it in the comments. Naming it out loud is the first step to breaking free from clutter's grip. Hack 4. The cost of clutter check. Margaret's fourth hack demolished her biggest fear. What if I need this someday and can't replace it? She developed the cost of clutter check, asking 3 brutal questions for every item she hesitated to release. 1. Can I replace this if I need it? 2. How much would it cost? 3. When did I last use it in the past 5 years? These questions expose the truth behind her just-in-case mentality. She applied this to her garage, stuffed with tools from her DIY days. Could she replace a rusty hammer? Yes, for $5 at any hardware store. Last used? Never. She hired professionals for repairs now. She kept one good screwdriver and donated the rest to a neighbor starting a home repair business. Her craft supplies were next. Piles of yarn for knitting projects she'd never start, fabric scraps from sewing she no longer enjoyed. Replacement cost? $10 max at a craft store. Last used? Over 15 years ago. Out they went to a local art program. The math was undeniable. The cost of keeping these items, cluttered space, mental stress, and constant cleaning, was far higher than the cost of replacing them if she ever needed to. The real revelation came with furniture. Margaret had an old sofa in her garage, just in case she needed extra seating for a big gathering. Replacement cost? $50 at a thrift store. Cost of keeping it? A cramped garage that stressed her out every time she parked her car. She donated it to a young family furnishing their first home. Her kitchen appliances got the same treatment. A bread maker used once in 12 years, a juicer from a short-lived health kick. Replacement cost for either? Under $30 at a thrift store. Meanwhile, they were stealing counter space and making her kitchen feel chaotic. She donated them to a community kitchen, feeling a surge of relief. Objection. What if I can't afford to replace things? Focus on items you haven't used in years. They're likely not critical to your daily life. If you're worried about cost, check local donation centers or online marketplaces for affordable replacements. What's one item you're keeping just in case that you could replace for under $15? Extra tools, old linens, or kitchen gadgets? Share it in the comments, and let's do this reality check together to free up your space. Hack 5. The energy priority scale. Margaret's fifth hack saved her from the emotional burnout that stops most decluttering attempts dead in their tracks. She realized that seniors have limited emotional energy to spend agonizing over every object, so she created the energy priority scale, rating items from 1, no emotional value, trash immediately, to 10, irreplaceable, deserves careful attention. This system let her invest her energy only in what truly mattered. Her book collection was the perfect test case. Old mystery novels she'd read once and would never touch again? Rated 1, straight to the donation box for the library sale. Her mother's gardening journal, filled with handwritten notes and sketches? Rated 10, carefully cleaned and stored in an archival box. Her closet was next, 50 dresses crammed into a space meant for 20, but she only wore 10 regularly. Most rated 1 to 3, donated to a women's shelter without hesitation. Her favorite dress, a vibrant blue one that made her feel confident, rated 9, kept and hung properly with space to breathe. This hack revealed a surprising truth. Margaret was wasting emotional energy on items that didn't matter, like chipped mugs or faded curtains, while neglecting functional clutter that frustrated her daily life, like a desk drawer so full she couldn't open it. She applied the scale to her office, rating old tax returns 1, shredded if over 7 years old, insurance policies 10, properly filed, and random receipts 3, tossed after a quick scan. The result was a desk she could actually use for writing letters to her grandchildren. Objection. What if everything feels important? Start with one small category, like clothes or papers, and rate just 10 items to practice. You'll quickly see what deserves your energy. What's draining your emotional energy? Piles of papers, unused decor, or broken appliances? Comment below, and let's identify your energy vampires. Naming them is the first step to reclaiming your peace of mind. Hack 6. The Next Chapter Test. Margaret's sixth hack was a total game changer, shifting her entire perspective on decluttering. She started making decisions based on who she was becoming, not who she was. The Next Chapter Test asks one powerful question. Does this item serve the person I want to be, or is it tying me to a past I've outgrown? This approach was revolutionary because it focused on excitement for the future, not guilt about the past. Her teaching supplies from her 30-year career as an elementary school teacher were the first test. She'd kept boxes of lesson plans, grade books, and bulletin board decorations, representing decades of dedication. But her next chapter involved volunteering at a library and learning photography. Those supplies weren't serving her future, they were anchoring her to a completed past. She donated them to new teachers, imagining them sparking creativity in classrooms. Her kitchen followed. Heavy cookware for big family dinners didn't fit her new life of simple meals, travel, and hosting small book club gatherings. She kept one versatile pan and donated the rest, creating a kitchen that felt peaceful and aligned with her goals. The emotional shift was profound when she tackled her partner's belongings. Margaret had kept his fishing gear, thinking it honored his memory. But her future self wanted to focus on healing and new experiences, not maintaining a shrine. She kept his favorite fishing hat, which brought her joy, and donated the rest to a community program for kids. This mindset made letting go exciting. She wasn't losing her past, she was making room for her next adventure. She cleared space in her spare room for a photography nook, replacing dusty binders with a camera, tripod, and a small table for editing photos. Objection. What if I don't know who I'm becoming? Try one new hobby or goal, like joining a book club or taking a class, to guide your decisions. Who's your next chapter self, and what do they need to thrive? Space for a new hobby, a calmer home, or room to breathe? Share your vision in the comments. Declaring it publicly can give you the courage to let go of what's holding you back. Hack 7. The Gratitude Goodbye. Margaret's seventh and final hack was the key to preventing regret and sealing her transformation. She created gratitude goodbye rituals to honor items before letting them go, turning guilt and loss into closure and gratitude. Instead of sneaking items out in trash bags like she was ashamed, she thanked each one for its role in her life, making every decision feel meaningful. For her partner's old sweaters, she held a memory ritual, recalling cozy evenings by the fire while he wore them. She thanked them for their warmth, then donated them to a homeless shelter, knowing they'd comfort someone else. Her kids' old toys, plastic dinosaurs, dollhouses, and board games were tougher. She took photos of each item, created a digital memory lane album to share with her children, and donated the physical toys to a daycare. Her chipped dishes, used for countless family dinners, got a thank you for years of service before heading to textile recycling. Even her old sewing machine, untouched for 20 years, got a ritual. She thanked it for the curtains she'd made for her first home, then passed it to a young neighbor, learning to sew. These rituals made every decision final and peaceful. Without them, Margaret caught herself second-guessing, even pulling items from donation bags. The gratitude goodbye transformed letting go into an act of love, not loss. Her most moving ritual was for her wedding photos. She had 18 albums, many filled with blurry shots or duplicates. She held a memory celebration, thanking each batch for capturing her love story, then condensed them into 2 albums that truly told her journey. The rest were recycled, knowing the memories lived in her heart. Objection. What if rituals feel silly or take too much time? Try a simple mental thank you. It takes seconds and still brings closure. What sentimental item is hardest for you to let go? Photos, clothes, or kids' artwork? Comment with a gratitude goodbye idea to release it with love instead of guilt. Let's make letting go a celebration. The transformation in your challenge. When the moving van arrived 48 hours later, Margaret was ready. She donated 15 truckloads to families in need, kept only what served her next chapter, and felt unshackled from the weight of her past. Her home was no longer a museum, it was a launch pad for her future. 6 months later, she called me from her new apartment, her voice brimming with excitement. Her words stuck with me. I didn't just declutter my home, I decluttered my soul for what's next. She's now teaching photography classes at the senior center, volunteering at a library, and planning her first solo trip to Italy, a dream she'd shelved for decades. Decluttering isn't about losing memories. It's about making room for the life you deserve. Here's your challenge. Pick one hack and try it today. Start with an 8-minute blitz on a single drawer or shelf and comment below with what you tossed or donated. I'll cheer you on and might even feature your story in a future video. If you're ready to go bigger, try the brutal sort method on one room this week and share your progress. Hit that like button to help others discover this life-changing system. Subscribe and ring the bell for weekly hacks to make your next chapter your best. And share this video with someone who needs a reset, maybe a friend, parent, or neighbor. Which hack will you try first? And what's one item you're ready to let go? Drop it in the comments. I respond to every single one. Let's declutter your life together and make room for the future you're meant to live.
Eleanor was 76 when she finally decided to face the papers. Eleanor never meant to let it pile up. But somehow, over 25 years, the papers just multiplied. She had them everywhere, tucked into drawers, tucked behind the toaster, stacked in old cookie tins, folded inside magazines, hidden in shopping bags behind the couch, stacked in boxes under the bed, slipped between books on dusty shelves. A mix of bills, warranties, greeting cards, old recipes, church bulletins, receipts from stores that no longer existed. There were papers she didn't recognize, and papers she recognized too well. They were everywhere. Every time she tried to start, the questions would come. What if I throw out something important? What if I regret it later? And worst of all, where do I even begin? So she didn't. She walked past them. For years. Until one morning, Eleanor looked around and said to herself, "This isn't peace. This is weight." Now, maybe you've never met Eleanor, but something about her story feels familiar. Maybe because her drawers look like your drawers. Maybe because you've also stared at a pile of paper and felt that lump in your throat. Or maybe you've sat in your favorite chair thinking, I just don't have the energy for this anymore. And if that's you, I want to say this with love and with truth. You're not lazy. You're not a hoarder. You're not falling behind. You're someone who has lived a full, complex, beautiful life. And that life left behind a trail of paper. That's exactly where Eleanor was. But instead of trying to declutter like she did when she was 40, Eleanor made a different choice. She didn't rush. She didn't do it the right way. She did it her way. Slowly, gently, wisely. And within 2 days, she had done what felt impossible. She cleared 25 years of paper without guilt, without exhaustion, and without even standing up for most of it. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact 5 hacks Eleanor used to finally take back her space. One paper at a time. And if she could do it, I promise you can too. Before we jump into Eleanor's first hack, can I ask you a small favor? If you're sitting there thinking, finally, someone who actually gets what I'm dealing with, then go ahead and subscribe. You're welcome here, and I'm really glad you found this video. And if there's a certain kind of paper that drives you nuts, maybe it's old medical stuff or envelopes you've been avoiding for months, drop it in the comments. It helps to name it. You'd be surprised how many of us are quietly wrestling with the same mess. Now, let me show you what worked for Eleanor. 1. The 3-box rule. Eleanor didn't start by opening every drawer in the house. She didn't spread paper across the dining table. She started with 3 simple containers. One said keep, the second said shred, and the third said recycle. That was it. No fancy labels, no overthinking. Just 3 boxes that gave her something powerful, a place to begin. The rule was simple. Every paper she picked up had to go into one of those 3. If it was something truly important, like legal, medical, or current financial info, it went in the keep box. If it had her name, address, or anything personal and wasn't needed anymore, it went in the shred box. And if it was just general clutter, old flyers, expired coupons, outdated manuals, it went straight to recycle. This simple system gave Eleanor the structure her mind was craving. She no longer had to ask, should I keep this? She only had to ask, which of the 3? And that took a huge weight off. But here's the part most people don't talk about. It wasn't just organizing. It was emotional. Every paper she touched came with a memory, a question, a whisper of the past. Some made her smile, others made her pause, and a few, well, they made her cry. But having a system, just those 3 boxes, helped her stay grounded. It let her make decisions without being buried in the emotion of each one. She didn't need to finish it all in one sitting. She just needed to keep going, one paper at a time. Now, if you're someone who struggles with energy or mobility, here's how Eleanor made it work without ever pushing herself too far. She sat in her armchair, next to her 3 containers. Her niece brought over a small stack of papers from the hallway table, just enough to sort through slowly. When that batch was done, her niece brought a little more. And when Eleanor got tired, they stopped. No guilt, no pressure. If you don't have a helper, you can still do this. Just adapt the method. Bring a few papers to your chair or bedside in a bag, a tray, or even a cookie tin. Then place your 3 containers nearby: laundry baskets, plastic bins, cardboard boxes. Whatever you already have. The point isn't to finish fast, it's to keep moving forward your way. This one method gave Eleanor something she hadn't felt in a long time: control. Not over the paper, over the process. She made the decisions, she set the pace, and with every item that went into a box, she felt a little lighter. Sometimes the hardest part of decluttering isn't the stuff. It's the fear that we won't be able to do it. But Eleanor did, and so can you. The 12-month rule. Eleanor had a tendency many of us share. She kept papers just in case. Old electric bills from 5 years ago, expired appliance warranties, notes from doctors she hadn't seen in over a decade. She couldn't bring herself to let them go, because in the back of her mind, she always thought, what if I need this later? What if this turns out to be important? It's not that she wanted to keep everything. She was just afraid of throwing away the wrong thing. Then one day her granddaughter said gently, "Grandma, if you haven't needed it in the past year, you probably won't need it again." That simple idea became Eleanor's second rule, and it changed everything. If she hadn't needed a paper in the past 12 months, and it wasn't legal or medical, she let it go. No debate, no guilt. 12 months became her threshold for clarity. That one rule helped Eleanor get unstuck. It gave her permission to stop holding on to paper out of fear. She realized that most of what she was saving wasn't about usefulness. It was about worry. Worry that she'd forget something. Worry that she'd throw away proof of something she might one day need to explain. But after years of carrying those papers around, and not once going back to look at them, she realized something important. The act of keeping the paper was what was weighing her down, not the information on it. So she began to hold each item up and ask, have I needed this in the last year? If the answer was no, and it wasn't a will, a deed, a recent medical report, or anything she'd been told to hold on to, it went straight to the shred or recycle box. For Eleanor, this rule didn't just clear out paperwork, it cleared her mind. She started to feel less anxious, less uncertain. There was no need to reread every document or imagine a dozen what-if scenarios. Just one quiet question and a simple decision. And if you're the kind of person who struggles with that voice in your head, the one that says, keep it just in case, this rule might set you free too. Because here's the truth. If you haven't needed it in a year, your life has already proven it's not essential. Letting go isn't careless, it's wise. It's you deciding what matters most today. That's what Eleanor did. And once she started letting go of the just-in-case papers, she had more space, more peace, and a whole lot fewer envelopes stuffed into drawers. Be honest. How many just-in-case papers are hiding in your drawers? If you're nodding right now, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments what kind of paper always trips you up. For Eleanor, it was old warranties. 3. The legacy folder. Eleanor came across a letter from her late husband tucked between an old tax return and a dentist's bill. The letter was soft from handling, creased from being read and reread over the years. Her hand trembled as she held it. That's when she realized something important. Not all papers are just paper. Some carry pieces of your life, moments that can't be replaced and don't belong in the shred or recycle box. And yet, those treasures were mixed in with junk mail, expired coupons, and old phone bills. Everything felt jumbled together, important and unimportant, sacred and throwaway. That's when she decided to create something different. She called it her legacy folder. It wasn't for receipts or statements. It wasn't for maybe one-day documents. It was for her and for the people who loved her. Inside the legacy folder, Eleanor placed only what truly mattered to her story. A few handwritten letters, a photo of her children when they were small, the newspaper clipping from when she won an award at work, the speech from her 50th wedding anniversary, a birthday card from her father, written in a handwriting she hadn't seen in decades. That folder became her permission slip. It allowed her to let go of the rest, because the best was safely saved. Instead of keeping 100 papers out of guilt, she kept 10 out of love. And the most powerful thing she said about it? This is for my story, not my storage. You see, the legacy folder wasn't just for Eleanor, it was for the people who'd come after her. For the family members who might one day open a drawer and say, "Why did she keep all this?" Now, they wouldn't have to guess. The folder would speak for itself. If you're sorting through old papers and feel your heart catch on something, a memory, a face, a time long gone, set it aside, not to hoard, but to honor. You don't need a whole cabinet to preserve your legacy, just one folder. And if you're someone with limited energy or movement, this can still work beautifully for you. Ask a loved one or helper to bring you small batches of papers, and as you sort through them from your chair or bedside, keep a special envelope or slim file nearby. That becomes your legacy folder. No lifting, no rushing, just choosing what feels like you. Eleanor's folder now rests in her dresser drawer. Not hidden, but not on display either. It's there when she wants to smile, when she wants to remember. And someday, when she's no longer here, it will remind the people she leaves behind of exactly who she was. Not every paper tells your story, but the ones that do, those deserve a home. 4. Snap and shred. One of Eleanor's biggest struggles wasn't with the junk. It was with the almosts. The church bulletin where her name had been printed for organizing the bake sale. A birthday card from a neighbor who'd since passed. A flyer from a reunion she didn't attend, but still smiled thinking about. They weren't things she truly needed, but they tugged at her heart. And when she stood over the shred box with one of those papers in her hand, she'd freeze. Her fingers would tighten, her mind would whisper, "Not this one. Not yet." And that's when her niece gently offered a new idea. "Let's take a picture of it first." At first, Eleanor frowned. What would I do with a picture of a piece of paper? But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She didn't need the paper. She just didn't want to forget what it meant to her. So they made a little folder in her phone's photo album and called it Keepsakes. Her niece helped her snap quick photos, nothing fancy, just enough to preserve the memory, the handwriting, the feeling, the moment. And then, Eleanor did something remarkable. She shredded the paper. Not because it didn't matter, but because it did. And she had honored it in a way that didn't take up space in a drawer or cabinet. Snap and shred became her bridge between attachment and release. It let her hold on emotionally, without holding on physically. It gave her freedom. Not just from clutter, but from guilt. You might be wondering, what if I don't know how to use a phone like that? That's okay. Eleanor didn't either, at first. Her niece helped. But if you don't have someone nearby, there are other ways. You could use a simple scanner app. Some libraries or senior centers have public devices that let you scan and email yourself images. Or, if that feels like too much, just set aside those few papers in a small folder marked to digitize later. When a friend or family member visits, ask them to help. The key isn't speed, it's clarity. And if you're sorting from a chair or a bed, you don't need to reach for anything. Just have someone bring the papers to you, one small stack at a time. You look, decide, snap, shred, rest. That's still progress. Eleanor used to feel stuck between her emotions and her drawers. Now, she has space, in her home and in her heart. If this snap and shred idea feels like something your sister, your friend, or someone you care about could use, don't keep it to yourself. Go ahead and share this video with them. And if you've ever saved a paper just because it made you smile, tell me what it was. I'd love to know. 5. The kitchen counter test. After 2 solid days of sorting through her paper clutter, Eleanor had made serious headway. Her keep, shred, and recycle boxes were working beautifully. She'd applied the 12-month rule. She created a legacy folder for the meaningful things she truly wanted to pass on. She even used her phone to take pictures of the memories she didn't want to store in drawers anymore. But even with all that, a few papers remained. They weren't obviously important, but they weren't obviously trash either. A phone bill from 2016, a thank you note from a church neighbor, a printed email with a Bible verse she liked but didn't remember saving. That's when Eleanor came up with her final hack, and it was simple, smart, and decisive. She called it the kitchen counter test. Here's how it worked. She looked at each paper and asked herself, if I found this sitting on my kitchen counter today, would I actually deal with it, or would I move it aside like I've done 100 times before? That one question helped her cut through all the emotional back and forth. Because the truth was, most of those papers had already been ignored for years. They were just taking up space and energy she didn't have to spare. If she wouldn't act on it within the next day or two, it was gone. The kitchen counter had become her measuring stick, and it was perfect. Because it wasn't about perfection or paperwork, it was about her present life. No more saving papers, just in case. No more boxes full of maybe. If it wasn't meaningful, recent, or actionable, it didn't make the cut. And for Eleanor, that clarity was the difference between staying stuck and finishing what she started in just 2 days. Now, if you're someone who's been sorting and still finding it hard to make the final call on certain papers, this might be your breakthrough too. Picture your kitchen counter. Would you handle it today, or would you push it aside? If you'd push it aside, let it go. And don't worry if you're not up on your feet or sorting through stacks on your own. Eleanor used a tray on her lap. Her niece brought her manageable batches to sort from her favorite chair. Each paper, one by one, got the same question. Would I handle this now, or am I just holding on out of habit? If it wouldn't earn space on your counter, it doesn't need space in your life. That's how Eleanor wrapped up her decluttering, with clarity, not confusion. Now, she finished in 2 days because she had help, time, and motivation. But that's not the rule. It's not a race. You don't have to declutter your papers in 2 days. You don't even have to do it all this week. You just need to start. Pick up one small stack, sort it using the hacks that feel doable to you, and see it through, at your pace. Because every bit of paper you let go of is a little more space in your home and a little less weight on your shoulders. If you're working from a chair, a bed, or on days when your energy is low, that's okay. You can still use this test. Ask a loved one to bring you small batches. Lay them out on a tray. Look at each one and ask, would I take care of this today, or am I just holding on to it out of habit? That question alone can unlock weeks, even years of stuck energy. And here's the truth. Finishing your paper clutter doesn't mean being fast. It means being free. So go gently, go slowly. But promise yourself this: you will start and you will finish. Because you deserve a space that reflects your life now, not just your past. Even after sorting, one question still comes up. Now what do I do with all this paper? The good news? You don't need to buy anything. You don't need a shredder, a special bin, or a paid service. There are simple, free ways to safely and effectively get rid of the papers you no longer need. For private papers, things like bills, bank statements, or medical records, the goal is to destroy the personal information. You can do that right at home. Tear them by hand into small pieces. It takes a little time, but you can do it while watching TV or listening to music. Cut them up with scissors, especially over the name or account number. Or try this trick. Soak the papers in water with a little dish soap. Let them sit for a few hours until they turn to mush. Once they're soft and unreadable, you can toss them in the trash without worry. These are all safe and effective, and they don't cost a thing. For regular paper, magazines, junk mail, old flyers, notebooks, use your home's recycling bin. If carrying is difficult, place papers in small grocery bags. Leave the bag near your chair or bed and fill it little by little. When it's full, you can ask a friend, neighbor, or family member to help place it by the curb, or take it out when you're already heading that way. And if recycling isn't available where you live, don't feel bad. You can throw non-private papers into the regular trash. There's no shame in doing what works. The key is this: you already did the hard part, deciding what to keep. Now you're just clearing space. And you can do it your way without spending a dime. You don't have to clear it all in one day. You just have to begin and keep going. Every paper you toss is a quiet victory. Not for a cleaner home, but for a lighter heart. Progress isn't how fast you move. It's that you moved at all. And that matters more than you know. So let me ask you, what's one paper pile you're finally ready to let go of this week? Just type a word in the comments. Receipts, old bills, random mail. That's all it takes to start. And if this felt like the kind of support you've been needing, I'd love to have you subscribe. Not for pressure, not for noise, just quiet help when you want it. You're not behind, you're just clearing space for what comes next. If you're over 60 and still spending hours organizing things you probably won't ever use again, you're not alone. But you are making decluttering 10 times harder than it needs to be. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 common time-wasting habits that are keeping so many of us stuck in clutter. These are things that feel productive, but they're actually slowing us down. The third one on this list? It's one I personally struggled with for years, and it actually made my home more cluttered, not less. And that final tip? It just might change how you think about letting go for good. But let me ask you something first. Have you ever spent an entire weekend decluttering, only to feel like nothing really changed? If so, I want to welcome you back, especially if you're part of our growing community here. Over the past few videos, we've talked about what to declutter, how to handle the emotional side of it, and how to stay motivated when it feels overwhelming. But many of you in the comments asked for something different. You wanted to know, what should we stop doing? What are the tasks that feel helpful, but are really just keeping us stuck? So today I'm answering that request. I'm going to show you the 7 most useless tasks to avoid in every decluttering session. Why they trip up millions of seniors, how to break free from them, and what to do instead to actually move forward faster. And if you've ever felt frustrated by how slow and draining this process can be, just hit the like button. This channel is here for people just like you, and your engagement helps more elderly people find the clarity and relief they deserve. And if you're new here, welcome to Elder Soul Journal, where we talk honestly about life after 60 and help you create a home and mindset that feels calm, clear, and truly your own. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications. Let's start with a habit that feels helpful, but quietly eats up your time and energy. That's organizing things before you've even decided whether you're keeping them. I see it all the time. Neatly folding old t-shirts you haven't worn in years, alphabetizing books you don't plan to read again, or carefully labeling bins full of items that are headed straight for donation. But you just haven't realized it yet. Someone in our community, Ellen, shared her story with me not long ago. She'd spent nearly 2 months trying to declutter her sewing corner. When we spoke, she told me how proud she was of the progress. All her fabric folded by pattern, buttons sorted by size, and threads arranged in rainbow order. But here's the twist. She hadn't touched a sewing project in nearly 6 years. And when I gently asked if she planned to get back to it, she paused and said, "Probably not." What happened to Ellen is something I call the organization trap. She was doing what felt productive, but really she was avoiding the harder task, making decisions. She spent most of her time organizing, but only a sliver of that time actually deciding what still belonged in her life. And that's where so many of us get stuck. Why do we do this? Well, after decades of running households, raising kids, or managing routines, our brains are trained to default to organize mode the second we see a mess. Sorting feels familiar. It gives us a sense of control. But when you're organizing things you haven't committed to keeping, you're just rearranging clutter, not clearing it. It's like ironing clothes you're planning to throw away. Here's a mindset shift to try. Organization should come after the decision, not before. Don't waste your energy making something look neat if it's not meant to stay. Before you touch a single item to fold, stack, or label, ask yourself, do I love this? Do I use this? Does this serve my life today? If the answer isn't a clear yes, it doesn't deserve your organizing energy. Professional organizers call this the decision-first rule. And let me tell you, it can cut your decluttering time by more than half. Instead of spending 4 hours making pretty piles, Spend 2 hours making real decisions. Then organize what's left in 30 minutes. You'll feel lighter, faster. Have you ever found yourself tidying up things you weren't even sure you wanted to keep? Let me know in the comments. I read every single comment. The second useless task that's sabotaging your progress? Spending hours researching the perfect donation home for every single item. I've seen people spend more time figuring out where to give things away than they spent acquiring them in the first place. One man in our community, let's call him Harold, shared that he had filled his spare bedroom with donation boxes. But instead of moving them out, he kept adding sticky notes. Find local art school for these supplies. Maybe check if the shelter takes small appliances. Look up specialized drop-off for electronics. Harold was stuck. Not because he didn't want to let go, but because he thought every item had to go to just the right person, in just the right place. What started as good intentions had turned into a research project that went on for months. And all the while, the clutter sat untouched, draining his energy and filling up his home. This is what I call donation perfectionism. It looks like generosity on the surface, but more often than not, it's something else. Guilt. Guilt for not using the item. Guilt for letting it go. And trying to ease that guilt by controlling where everything ends up. But here's the truth. Most donation centers are well equipped to handle your items. That gadget you spent an hour Googling? Someone on staff can sort and price it in 30 seconds. Those textbooks? They know exactly who needs them. You don't need to solve the whole puzzle. You just need to let go. The extra time we have later in life makes this trap especially tempting. We want to be thoughtful, and that's a good thing. But when thoughtfulness becomes a delay tactic, it's time to draw a line. Here's your new rule. Choose 3 donation outlets and stick with them. 1 general purpose place, like Goodwill or a local thrift store. 1 specialty option, maybe a group that takes household items or building supplies. And 1 small, local organization you personally trust. That's it. No rabbit holes. No guilt-driven research marathons. If something is truly rare or valuable, and I mean truly, like over $200, then it might be worth your time to sell or rehome it more carefully. But for everything else, the goal isn't perfect placement. The goal is release. Because the truth is, the longer those items sit in limbo while you're searching for the ideal recipient, the more they drain your energy, your time, and your peace of mind. You're not just storing things, you're storing stress. When you stop researching and start letting go, something shifts. You reclaim your space, your home starts to feel lighter, and that quiet weight that's been sitting on your shoulders, it finally lifts. The third useless task that might be adding more clutter than clarity? Setting up just-in-case storage systems for just-in-case moments that never come. It's a habit that feels smart. Careful, responsible. But when you look closely, it's often just a quiet form of clutter, dressed up as preparation. Let me tell you about Gerald, a retired engineer in our community. He'd spent years turning his garage into a backup supply hub. There were rows of neatly labeled tubs, spare cords, extra baking pans, miscellaneous office supplies, even one called "Gifts in Case I Need One." On paper, it looked organized, but he admitted something to me that stuck. He hadn't used 90% of it in over 4 years. The truth is, Gerald wasn't storing items. He was storing worry. Worry that he might need something later. Worry that replacing it would be difficult. And for many of us who live through tough times, rationing, financial hardship, or simply making do, that mindset is deeply ingrained. Saving things just in case gave us security. But now, it's quietly costing us peace. Most of these just-in-case items are never actually needed. And when we do face those rare moments, half the time the thing we saved is outdated, broken, or no longer relevant to the life we live now. Here's the part no one talks about. Every maybe item you keep, every stack of linens for guests who never come, every appliance for meals you don't cook anymore, represents a decision you've postponed. And your brain keeps track of those. All of them. That's where the stress creeps in. Not from the stuff itself, but from the weight of managing it, remembering it, and quietly asking yourself, should I still keep this? Here's the shift. Instead of asking, what if I need this someday? Start asking, how is this helping me live better today? If the answer isn't clear, you've got your decision. There are always exceptions. Essential documents, a few meaningful keepsakes, items you truly use seasonally. But the backup rice cooker you've never touched? The third duvet set for a guest bed you don't even have anymore? That's not safety. That's clutter with a story attached. Start small. Pick one just-in-case category and let yourself release it. You'll be surprised how much lighter your space and your mind will feel once you stop planning for every future emergency and start living fully in the present. The fourth useless task that's keeping you stuck in a frustrating cycle? Revisiting the same cluttered areas again and again without ever making firm decisions. It feels like you're making progress, but you're really just rearranging the same items over and over. I call this decluttering déjà vu, and it's one of the sneakiest ways clutter holds us hostage. Let me give you an example. Philip, a retired contractor in our community, once shared that every few months he'd tackle the shelves in his spare room. He'd pull out the same dusty toolkits, half-used notebooks, stacks of old manuals. He'd move a few things around, toss out one or two scraps, and then carefully put everything back, almost exactly where it was. "I'm getting to it," he'd tell himself. But 3 years later, nothing had really changed. Philip was decluttering, but he wasn't deciding. He was stuck in a loop, hoping that the answer about what to keep or toss would magically become clear the next time around. Why do so many of us do this? It's usually because we believe that the more we look at something, the easier it will be to let it go. But the truth is, the opposite is more likely. There's a psychological principle called the mere exposure effect. The more we see something, the more emotionally familiar it becomes. Even if it's outdated or broken, it starts to feel like it belongs. That old remote, those recipe clippings, the lamp you haven't plugged in for years. Every time you touch them without choosing, you strengthen your attachment to things you no longer need. Here's what professional organizers understand. Indecision is a decision. It's the decision to stay stuck. Every item you keep putting back for now is quietly voting for more clutter and more stress. Here's the shift. From now on, when you're decluttering an area, you give each item one chance. You pick it up and ask the core questions. Do I love this? Do I use this? Does it support the life I'm living today? If you can't say yes, it goes. No maybe pile. No, I'll think about it later. And if you really can't decide, there's a fallback. The decision box. Label a bin with today's date and place undecided items inside. Set a reminder for 6 months. If you haven't needed anything from that box by then, donate the entire thing without reopening it. This takes courage, I know. We're used to revisiting the same choices again and again, hoping it'll get easier. But when you commit to making decisions the first time around, your energy returns. Your space begins to breathe. And the loop finally breaks. What's the space in your home that keeps pulling you back, even though nothing really changes? Let's talk about it in the comments. You might help someone else break free from this decluttering déjà vu. The fifth useless task that's quietly costing you peace of mind? Holding on to items just because they were expensive, even if they no longer fit your life. This is something I call cost trap clutter. The kind of stuff we hold on to simply because we paid a lot for it, even when it's no longer serving us. And it's one of the most emotionally convincing traps in decluttering, especially after 60. It convinces us that keeping something we don't use is better than wasting what we spent on it. But here's the truth. The money is already gone. And the longer you hold on, the more you keep paying in ways that have nothing to do with money. Let me tell you about Denise. Years ago, she bought a custom-made living room set, a large sectional sofa, coordinating armchairs, and a glass coffee table. It cost her thousands. But now, Denise lives alone in a smaller space. The oversized furniture doesn't fit her lifestyle anymore. It's hard to move, takes up half the room, and she never uses the matching chairs. Still, every time the idea of letting it go came up, she'd say the same thing. But I paid so much for it. Denise was paying emotional rent every single day, walking around, cleaning around, squeezing around items that no longer served her, all because of what she'd paid in the past. This is especially tough for seniors, because many of us remember what it took to make those purchases. That furniture set might have cost months of savings, the exercise machine in the guest room, bought with good intentions. The fancy dishes still in the cupboard? Purchased for a future that changed along the way. Here's how to break out of the cost trap clutter mindset. Holding on to expensive clutter doesn't honor the money you spent. It just delays the life you could be living now. Every time you see that unused item, feel guilty about it, or work around it, you're continuing to pay for it with your time, your space, and your peace. There's a practical way to break this cycle. Ask yourself, what's the cost per use? If that 2,000-pound treadmill was used 10 times, that's 200 pounds per workout. If it's been untouched for years, that cost is rising, and the space it's taking up is becoming even more expensive. Take note of this helpful shift in mindset. The most expensive item in your home isn't the one you paid the most for. It's the one costing you stress, frustration, and space every single day without giving anything back. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and the item is to let it go to someone who will actually use it. That elegant table? It could be the heart of someone else's family gatherings. That barely used blender? A helpful tool in someone's kitchen. You're not losing value by letting go. You're reclaiming it. The freedom that comes when you stop justifying unused, high-priced clutter is powerful. You're not just clearing physical space. You're choosing your current life over past spending decisions. And that's a choice worth making. The sixth useless task that can turn a simple decluttering session into a full-blown project management nightmare? Creating too many sorting categories. At first, it feels like a great idea. You want to be organized. You want everything to go in the right place. But before you know it, your living room looks like a shipping warehouse. Boxes everywhere, each labeled with its own ultra-specific category. What started as decluttering becomes a sorting marathon with no end in sight. Let me tell you about Maureen, a retired accountant who wrote in recently. She was determined to finally clear out her home office, but instead of making quick keep or release decisions, she'd set up no fewer than 17 labeled piles. Bills, paid, bills, unpaid. To scan later, to shred eventually. Stationery, partial sets. Stationery, unused, office supplies, maybe useful, and on it went. She wasn't decluttering, she was inventorying. Maureen was exhausted, and after 6 weeks of sorting, not a single full box had left her home. Here's what's really going on. When we create endless categories, we're actually making more decisions, not fewer. And each little decision adds up, draining your mental energy before you've even tackled the real question. Do I want to keep this or not? It's called decision fatigue, and it's one of the biggest reasons people stall out during decluttering. You don't need to figure out exactly where every item belongs before you decide if it's worth keeping in the first place. That's backwards. Professional organizers have a saying, decluttering is not about perfect organization. It's about reducing excess. If you're letting something go, you don't need a category for it. And if you're keeping it, you'll organize it where it actually belongs later. Later, in the space it's meant to live. So here's the fix. Set up just 5 basic categories. Keep, donate, trash, sell. Only if you're truly committed to selling within 30 days. And relocate for things that belong in another room. That's it. No subcategories, no spreadsheets, no extra piles, just a clear, simple path forward. Why do people overcomplicate the process? Because it feels safer than letting go. Sorting feels productive, but it's often just procrastination dressed up as planning. It's a way to delay the emotional decisions that really matter. The transformation happens when you simplify. When your goal is peace, not perfection. When you stop organizing for an imaginary museum and start organizing for the life you actually want to live. Next time you declutter, try this. 1 item, 1 decision, 1 container. No extra steps. You'll be amazed at how much faster and easier the process becomes, and how much lighter your home feels when you stop trying to be the curator of everything you've ever owned. The 7th and most emotionally draining habit that keeps your home full and your heart heavy? Holding on to items out of guilt. Not because you use them, but because you feel bad you don't. This kind of guilt is powerful. It keeps so many people surrounded by things they don't want, don't need, and honestly, no longer even like. But they can't seem to let go, because part of them believes they failed by not using what they bought. Let me tell you about Anita, a woman in our community who shared her story. She had bought a full set of high-end baking tools, silicone molds, decorative piping sets, even a digital scale and stand mixer. Baking was going to be her new hobby in retirement. She'd imagined weekends, making treats for family, experimenting with recipes, maybe even starting a little blog. But life had other plans. After a few tries, her interest faded. The equipment was packed neatly into a cabinet where it sat untouched for nearly 8 years. When we talked about letting it go, she didn't talk about baking. She talked about regret. "It feels like I wasted money," she said, "like I wasted a version of myself I was supposed to become." That's what guilt does. It turns ordinary objects into emotional burdens. It convinces you to keep clutter as punishment for something you didn't follow through on. But here's the truth. The person who bought those items had hope, and hope is never wasted. You made that purchase with a sincere intention. Your interests changed. Your life shifted. That doesn't make you irresponsible. It makes you human. And this is especially hard for older adults, because every item feels like a bookmark from a different chapter in your life. The treadmill was your health goal. The painting supplies were your creative dream. The bread maker was your cozy winter plan. So when you let go, it can feel like letting go of a part of yourself. But here's the shift that frees you. Stop asking, "Why didn't I use this?" and start asking, "What is this costing me now?" Because the money is already spent. But the clutter? That's still charging you, in stress, in guilt, in space that could be used for something that fits your life now. Letting go of those items isn't failure. It's growth. It's choosing peace over punishment. It's making a decision not based on who you were or who you thought you'd be, but who you are today. I've seen this moment change people, not just their homes, but their outlook. When you let go of the guilt and the object that carries it, you get something back. Not money, but peace of mind. So take a moment. Look around. What's the one thing you've been keeping out of guilt? That might be the very thing you need to let go of, to make space. Not just in your home, but in your heart. Now imagine walking into your home after letting go of these 7 useless decluttering tasks. You're not buried in piles of donation research. You're not setting up just-in-case storage bins that only collect dust. You're not revisiting the same drawer or closet over and over, hoping the items will decide for you. You're not keeping things simply because they were expensive. You're not drowning in sorting categories, and you're certainly not spending your afternoons feeling guilty over things you bought 10 years ago. Instead, you're making small, simple, honest decisions, one item at a time. Your home feels lighter because you've stopped micromanaging stuff that no longer belongs in your life. Your mind feels clearer because you've finally closed the loop on all those maybe later decisions. And your time? It's yours again, not spent managing clutter, but living. This is what happens when you stop being a curator of your past and become a creator of your future. You stop maintaining problems. You start solving them. And the energy you once poured into guilt, perfectionism, and hesitation, it flows straight into peace, freedom, and clarity. So here's your next step. Pick just one of the 7 useless decluttering tasks we talked about today. The one that felt a little too familiar. The one that made you pause. Decide to skip it during your next round of decluttering. Then come back and tell me in the comments, which task did you choose to let go of and what changed when you did? And if this video helped you feel more capable, more focused, or just a little less alone in your decluttering journey, give it a like and share it with someone who might need the same shift. Your small action could be the nudge someone else needs to finally clear space for the life they deserve. If you find these kinds of conversations helpful, I'd be glad to have you subscribe. Marcia just wanted to clear out a few boxes in her basement. She left with a lung infection that nearly landed her in intensive care. Joyce climbed a small step stool to grab a holiday platter and shattered her hip in 2 places. Moments like these changed lives forever. And they all started with one simple decision: to declutter. If you're over here and planning to tidy up your home, in 15 minutes, this video would expose you to some truths that could protect your health and maybe even save your life. Have you ever picked up a box and felt that sharp twist in your back? The kind that makes you freeze mid-step, wondering if you just did something you can't undo? For seniors over 60, one wrong move while decluttering can change everything. turning a simple afternoon project into months of recovery, or worse. It happened just a few weeks ago to Thomas, a 74-year-old widower in Louisville, Kentucky. He was lifting old furniture in his basement, determined to finally clear it out before winter. But within minutes, he collapsed, his heart racing, his breath short. By the time paramedics arrived, he was in cardiac distress. He's alive today, but his daughter says he hasn't been the same since. Decluttering is supposed to feel good. Clean space, clear mind, peaceful home. But there's a hidden side no one talks about. The real dangers certain decluttering tasks pose for older adults. And they're more common than you think. The 8 deadliest decluttering mistakes seniors make, why they're especially risky after 60, and what you can do to avoid them. These aren't just physical dangers. We're talking breathing issues, heart strain, emotional trauma, and the one silent mistake that's likely sitting in your living room right now. Let's begin with the first hidden danger. You won't believe how many seniors still try to do this one thing alone. The first deadly decluttering mistake? Climbing into attic spaces or overhead storage areas without help. It feels like a quick, harmless task, but it's one of the most dangerous things seniors can do inside their own homes. This reminds me of Lorraine, a 71-year-old grandmother from Boise, Idaho. One Saturday afternoon, she decided to finally clear out the attic above her garage. Her plan? Make room for some old toys and donate the rest. She felt confident. After all, she'd been up there dozens of times when she was younger. But what Lorraine didn't factor in was how her body had changed. What used to be a simple climb became a perfect storm of risk. A wobbly ladder, poor air circulation, and intense heat trapped under the roof. Just 20 minutes into the job, surrounded by dust and sweat, she felt lightheaded. Instead of climbing down, she sat for a moment and blacked out. When her daughter came by that afternoon and found her, she was lying on the plywood floor, confused and dangerously dehydrated. This isn't rare. Each year, over 160,000 Americans end up in the emergency room due to ladder-related falls, and a large number are over 65. But falls aren't the only danger. Attics are hot, cramped, and full of airborne particles. For seniors, that combination can spike blood pressure, strain the heart, and trigger breathing problems faster than most people realize. So what's the safer path? First, never enter attic spaces alone. Always have someone nearby or on the phone who can check in every few minutes. Second, avoid working during the heat of the day. Early mornings are best. Third, use the bring it down method. Instead of sorting up there, bring boxes down in small manageable batches and organize them at table level. This eliminates the triple risk of height, heat, and hidden air hazards. And finally, pace yourself. 15 minutes of activity, followed by at least 10 minutes of rest. If it takes a week instead of a day, that's okay. Your safety matters more than the timeline. Have you been putting off a trip to your attic? Before you go up there, ask yourself, is it worth the risk? Or can someone help me bring it down safely? Your memories are meaningful, but your life is non-negotiable. The second mistake might surprise you, because it takes place in a part of the home that feels familiar, quiet, and harmless. But for seniors, decluttering the basement without preparation can turn into one of the most dangerous things you'll ever do. Let me tell you about Marcia, a 78-year-old retired librarian from Dayton, Ohio. Her basement had been untouched for years. After a recent roof leak was fixed, she decided to finally tackle the mess downstairs. Clear out the old books, boxes of her son's college stuff, and unused furniture from the 80s. She didn't think she was taking any risks. She was careful, she said. She wore gloves and carried a broom. But what she didn't account for was the air. As soon as Marcia opened the basement door, she noticed a musty smell. She figured it was just from years of closed-up space. But after 20 minutes of sorting through damp cardboard boxes, she started coughing. Not a little throat tickle. A deep, tight-chested cough she couldn't shake. Her eyes watered. Her hands trembled. What she didn't know was that her basement had developed hidden black mold in the insulation and along the baseboards. Spores had settled into every box of books and fabric down there. When she disturbed them, they became airborne. That night, Marcia was rushed to the ER with what doctors first thought was pneumonia, but later identified as a severe mold-related respiratory infection. She spent 5 days in the hospital and weeks afterward trying to breathe without medication. This kind of exposure is especially dangerous for older adults. With age, our lungs grow more sensitive, our immune responses slow down, and our bodies take longer to recover from environmental toxins. So, if your basement smells musty, looks damp, or contains materials that have absorbed moisture, don't go down there unprepared. Start with airflow. Open nearby windows if possible. Wear a good quality mask that actually filters out mold and dust, not just one of those thin paper ones. You want something that fits snugly and keeps the bad stuff out of your lungs. Never lift heavy or damp boxes alone. And before you sort anything, get the area checked for mold, especially if you've had past water damage. Even if it feels like just some old junk, your basement may be harboring invisible threats that could compromise your health in a matter of minutes. And if you've ever walked into a basement and thought, "I'll just get this done quickly," take a breath. Call someone. Share this video. Let them know you'll be checking in. Because no box is worth your lungs, your strength, or your life. Let me ask you something. Do you have any old cans, bottles, or cleaning supplies stored in your garage or under the sink? Ones you haven't touched in years, but you keep just in case? You might want to take a closer look. Because this next mistake isn't about lifting or falling. It's about something you can't even see until it's too late. Take Eddie, a 69-year-old former mechanic from Fort Worth, Texas. He'd always been a hands-on kind of guy, kept his garage tidy, his tools lined up, and his shelves full of useful stuff. But when his niece helped him clean out his garage, they came across rusted cans of paint, half-empty pesticide bottles, and some containers with the labels long worn off. Eddie figured he'd just pour the leftovers down the drain and toss the rest. He wasn't worried. But as he opened one old metal can of wood stain, it released a powerful chemical odor that hit him like a wave. He staggered backward, coughing, eyes watering. He assumed it was just strong fumes, until his chest began to burn and his vision blurred. He collapsed before they could finish the shelf. What Eddie didn't know is that many household chemicals become more dangerous over time. The metal containers corrode, the plastic ones degrade, and the chemicals inside, especially cleaners, solvents, and pesticides, can become unstable or even toxic with age. Some even react with each other. If you're wearing gloves that have bleach residue and you touch ammonia, for example, you're not just cleaning, you're creating a toxic gas cloud. And the older your body gets, the less it can handle those exposures. Your skin is thinner, your lungs are more sensitive, your liver and kidneys work slower. What barely irritated you at 40 could land you in the ICU at 65. So here's the rule I want you to remember. If the label is missing, if the cap is rusted, or if you don't remember the last time you used it, don't open it, don't sniff it, don't guess. Instead, treat it like hazardous waste. Put questionable containers in a separate plastic bin. Contact your local waste collection office. They'll tell you where to drop it off safely. Most towns even offer free household chemical collection days. And if it's leaking or smells off, leave it sealed and get help. Please don't try to be a chemist in your own garage. You don't need to figure it out on your own. You just need to know when not to touch it. Have you ever opened an old cleaner or container and been hit with a smell that made your eyes water? Share in the comments and any first aid you took. I'd love to hear what you discovered and how you handled it. Your story might help someone else avoid a scary situation. And if you've got someone in your life who's been meaning to clean out the garage, do them a favor and send them this video. You might be doing more than just helping them organize. You could be protecting their health. And while some dangers hide in forgotten bottles, others wear the face of familiarity. They look like that dresser you've shifted before, or that heavy armchair you've always been able to nudge into place. They wait quietly in your home until one moment, one instinct, turns a regular day into a hospital stay. This fourth mistake is one of the most underestimated because it feels like something you should still be able to do. Move a chair, slide a shelf, shift a table. You don't think twice about it until your body reminds you just how much has changed. Eleanor, a 78-year-old widow from Charleston, South Carolina, found that out the hard way. She'd been living alone since her husband passed 5 years ago. A strong woman, independent, proud. That week, she'd gotten new curtains from her daughter and wanted to give her spare bedroom a fresh look. The room had become a quiet space for books and memories, with an oak bookshelf standing tall along one wall, solid wood, decades old. She looked at it and thought, I'll just move it a few feet to let more light in. She didn't even pause to consider asking for help. Why would she? She'd done this kind of thing her whole life. So she leaned in, planted her feet, and started to push. But what she didn't realize, what so many of us don't, is that as we age, the muscles we once trusted aren't always there when we need them. Within seconds, her breathing tightened, her face flushed. She didn't notice that she'd been holding her breath, that natural reflex we barely think about when we strain. The pressure built up quickly, quicker than she expected, and by the time she got the bookshelf halfway across the room, she had to sit down. Her chest felt tight, like something inside had twisted the wrong way. Still, she said nothing. Hours passed before her son called to check in. Her voice was weak. She wasn't finishing sentences. He rushed over and found her sitting in the same chair, pale and trying to convince him she was fine. She wasn't. They drove straight to the ER. Doctors told her she was in the early stages of a hypertensive episode. Her blood pressure had surged to dangerous levels. And worse, the stress of exertion had triggered an irregular heartbeat. This happens far more often than people realize. Moving furniture, especially heavy pieces, puts enormous stress on the cardiovascular system. And when you hold your breath while doing it, which most of us do without thinking, it spikes your blood pressure even higher. Your heart strains, your oxygen drops, and if you already have high blood pressure or heart issues, that one push could land you in a hospital bed, or worse. But the danger doesn't stop at the heart. With age, your spine becomes more fragile, your joints less forgiving. What feels like a solid lift can become a slipped disc or a fractured vertebra. Your bones, your balance, your breath, none of them respond the way they used to. And once something goes wrong, recovery is never simple. So I want to ask you, have you ever looked at a heavy piece of furniture and thought, I'll just do it myself? Maybe you didn't want to bother anyone. Maybe you felt like it would only take a minute. But that minute could change everything. If you're thinking about rearranging a room, take a moment to plan ahead. Don't do it in a rush. Don't do it alone. And most of all, don't let pride trick you into thinking strength means silence. Real strength is knowing when to pause, when to ask for help, when to let the furniture stay exactly where it is for one more day. If you've ever had a moment like this, where your body reminded you of its limits, I'd love for you to share it in the comments. Not for sympathy, but because someone else watching right now might need to hear that they're not weak for slowing down. They're smart. And if you're finding this video helpful so far, go ahead and tap that like button. It lets YouTube know this kind of senior-focused advice matters, and it helps more people find their way to safety. Next, we're going into one of the quietest but most dangerous decluttering mistakes. One you can't even see until you're gasping for breath. The paper dust storm. You'd think something as harmless as paper couldn't hurt you. But the truth is, this next mistake sneaks up quietly. Not with a crash or a fall, but with a cough, a wheeze, a tightness in your chest that only gets worse with time. And it usually starts in the very room you feel most in control. The office, the den, that little corner where you've stacked years of bills, letters, and files. Eleanor's story in the last section was about pushing too hard too fast. But this next one is about staying still for too long in the wrong air. And the damage it causes isn't visible until it's already inside you. Let me tell you about Nancy, an 81-year-old retired accountant from Wichita, Kansas. She'd always been the organized type. Every tax return, every insurance policy, every medical record filed away in labeled boxes. But over the years, as the boxes multiplied and the labels faded, her home office turned into a sort of personal archive. And recently, when she decided to downsize and give her kids some peace of mind, she knew she needed to go through it all. One Saturday morning, she made herself a cup of tea, put on her glasses, and sat down with a pile of old folders. What she didn't notice right away was the thick layer of dust on the boxes, or the slightly musty smell that came from one stack of papers stored near a leaky window. She figured it was nothing, Just old paper, after all. She opened box after box. 25 years of bank statements, receipts, tax records, journals, school forms, and letters her husband had saved from the army. 2 hours in, Nancy was coughing. Not a little dry cough. It came from deep in her chest, raspy, sudden, and relentless. She stopped to drink water, thinking maybe it was just the dust getting kicked up. But by dinner time, her breathing felt tight. That night, she woke up gasping. Her daughter rushed her to urgent care at 2 in the morning. Doctors said she was lucky. It wasn't pneumonia yet, but it was close. The diagnosis? Acute bronchitis brought on by exposure to mold spores and paper dust. Nancy had stirred up decades of allergens and microscopic particles without realizing it. Those invisible threats had flooded her lungs, bypassing her body's natural filters. Her immune system, already slower from age, had gone into overdrive, and the inflammation nearly shut her airways down. You see, paper, especially when it's been stored in dark, humid, or enclosed spaces, becomes a breeding ground for mold, bacteria, and dust mites. And when disturbed, the fibers release fine particles so small they can travel deep into your lungs before you even feel the damage. For younger folks, maybe that just means a little sneeze or a tickle. But for seniors, it's far more serious. As we age, our lung capacity shrinks, our reflex to cough weakens, our immune systems react more slowly, and our tolerance for respiratory irritants drops dramatically. What feels like a harmless afternoon of paperwork can trigger a full-blown medical emergency. So how do you protect yourself? Start by treating old paper like you would sawdust or smoke, something that needs to be handled carefully. Work in a room with airflow. Crack a window. Use a fan to push air away from your face. And don't sit buried in the boxes. Bring just a few folders at a time into the open, well-lit space where you can sort at a safe distance. And please, don't just wear your glasses. Use a real protective mask, not a flimsy one from a drawer, but something that actually blocks dust and spores. You don't need a medical-grade mask, but you do need one that fits snugly and covers your mouth and nose. This is about more than comfort. It's about breathing freely tomorrow. Break the work into 30-minute sessions at most, then stop. Rest. Drink water. Let your body recover. If you start to cough or feel pressure in your chest, walk away. This isn't a race to the recycling bin. It's a process of keeping your past while protecting your future. If the job feels too big, consider hiring a local shredding service. Many will come pick up boxes and destroy them securely. That way, you don't have to handle every sheet yourself, especially the old ones soaked with allergens and age. Let me ask you, do you have stacks of paper tucked away that haven't seen daylight in years? Boxes in the closet? Drawers filled with just-in-case documents? Or folders in the garage slowly gathering dust? If so, now might be the time to make a plan. And if you've ever had a coughing fit while going through old files, or even found a musty smell in your paper piles, I'd love for you to share that story in the comments. Someone watching this might be right where Nancy was last month, and your voice could help them breathe easier. And if you're finding these tips helpful, tap that like button so YouTube knows this kind of content matters. And we can keep reaching seniors who need these life-saving reminders. And now we come to a danger that hides in plain sight. It doesn't creak, it doesn't smell, it doesn't shout. It just waits, about 2 feet off the ground, to change the course of your life in a single quiet moment. The high shelf hazard. It doesn't take a ladder or a second-story window to cause a life-altering fall. For most seniors, just one step up is all it takes, onto a stool, a chair, even the bottom rung of a stepladder, and everything can shift in an instant. That's exactly what happened to Joyce, a 70-year-old retired seamstress from Akron, Ohio. She'd always been active, independent, proud of doing things herself. That morning, she was simply reaching for her favorite red and gold holiday platter, the one she used every year for her grandkids' cookies. It was up on the top shelf of the kitchen cabinet, tucked just behind the turkey roaster. Without thinking, Joyce pulled out her old 2-step stool, the same one she'd used for years. It was sturdy, or so it seemed. She climbed up, stretched just a little farther than usual, and the rest happened faster than her reflexes could respond. Her balance shifted slightly, barely at all. But her body didn't adjust the way it used to. Her foot wobbled, her shoulder tilted. And before she could catch herself, she was falling backward through the air. She landed on the tile floor with a sickening thud, her hip taking the full force of the fall. The pain was immediate and blinding. Joyce couldn't move. She couldn't even sit up. She laid there for nearly an hour before a neighbor heard her moaning through the open window and called 911. The diagnosis? A double hip fracture. Not just a bruise, not a sprain. 2 clean breaks that would require surgery, months of rehabilitation, and a long-term care facility stay. That was 6 months ago. As of today, Joyce still hasn't returned home. You see, our bodies change more than we think they do. After 60, your inner ear, the system that helps you balance, becomes less sensitive. Your eyes can misjudge depth, especially in low light. But worst of all, your reaction time slows. That's what makes falls so dangerous. Even if you start to slip, you don't react fast enough to stop it. And when you hit the ground, it's not the same body absorbing that fall anymore. A fractured hip is one of the most serious injuries a senior can suffer. Recovery is long, it's painful, and in some cases people never fully regain their independence. What begins with reaching for a baking dish can end with a walker, or even a permanent move out of your home. And it's not just hips. Falling backward can lead to traumatic brain injuries because your brain, over time, shrinks slightly, creating more room inside the skull. That means when your head hits the floor, it moves farther, hits harder, and bleeds more easily than it once did. I want you to think about your own home for a moment. That top shelf in the kitchen, the linen closet, the cabinet above the fridge, the pantry where you keep the big mixing bowl. Do you really need to be climbing up there? If you do, please, don't do it alone. And don't use an old stool or a kitchen chair. That's not what they're meant for. Better yet, ask someone to bring the item down for you, or rearrange your storage so the things you use most are within reach. You don't need to prove anything by climbing, because no casserole dish is worth your mobility. No platter is worth your pain. Have you ever had a close call reaching for something up high? Maybe you caught yourself. Maybe you didn't. Tell me in the comments. Your story might be the one that convinces someone else to stay grounded. And if you're still watching, share the point that has touched you the most in the comments. It helps the algorithm share this with more seniors who need it. And it lets me know we're having the kinds of conversations that keep people safe, independent, and at home, where they belong. Some dangers are visible. You can see the edge of the stool. You can feel the weight of the bookshelf. But this next mistake is different. It doesn't come with a warning label. It doesn't make noise, and yet it can be the most devastating of them all. The grief trigger. This one doesn't just break bones, it can break the heart. And not in a metaphorical sense. After her husband passed, Ellen, a 76-year-old woman from Richmond, Virginia, left his things untouched. She didn't have the strength to face it at first. His closet, his desk drawer, his shoebox of letters, all remained just as he left them. She told her daughter, "I'll get to it when I'm ready." 2 years later, a chilly morning in January, she woke up and decided the time had come. Maybe it was the new year. Maybe it was just that strange flicker of courage that visits us sometimes, unannounced. She made herself tea, opened the bedroom window for light, and began to sort through his belongings. At first it felt okay. A few ties, his watch, a belt. But then she opened the bottom drawer of the wardrobe and found a photo album tucked between 2 sweaters, one she didn't remember putting there. It was from their honeymoon, 50 years ago, in Myrtle Beach. Her fingers paused on a black and white picture of the two of them, standing barefoot in the sand, her hair blown back by the wind, his arm around her shoulders. And that's when it hit her. Not a memory, not a tear. A crushing wave of grief that gripped her chest like a vice. She couldn't catch her breath. Her hands shook. Her heartbeat raced. She clutched her chest and sank to the floor. Her daughter, luckily, was just down the street and came over when Ellen didn't answer her phone. When she found her, Ellen was pale, sweating, and struggling to breathe. At the hospital, doctors told her it wasn't a panic attack. It was a real, measurable condition, stress-induced cardiomyopathy, more commonly known as broken heart syndrome. Her heart muscle had weakened from sudden emotional trauma. If she had waited to get help, it could have progressed into heart failure. Grief isn't just emotional. For older adults, it's a physical event. When we lose someone, especially a lifelong partner, the pain isn't confined to our thoughts. It surges through our entire nervous system. It raises blood pressure. It strains the heart. It disrupts breathing and floods the body with stress hormones. And if you try to face all of that in one sitting, while surrounded by deeply personal items, the toll can be overwhelming. Yet, this is a decluttering mistake so many make. We tell ourselves we just need to get it over with. We push through the emotions instead of pacing them. We try to be strong when what we really need is support. Here's my advice, from one human being to another. Don't do this part alone. Whether it's a friend, a family member, or even a professional organizer, have someone sit with you. Not to do the emotional work for you, but to keep you grounded while you do it. Start small. One drawer, one box. Not the whole closet. Give yourself permission to stop if it becomes too much. You don't need to finish grieving in a weekend. You only need to honor the process. Piece by piece, bit by bit. If you've ever had a moment like this, where a single object or photo unlocked more sorrow than you were ready for, share it in the comments. There's someone else watching who thinks they're the only one. Let them know they're not. In our final point, we'll talk about a mistake that's not physical and not emotional either, but psychological. Quiet, subtle, and so common, you may be living with it every single day without realizing it's keeping you stuck. Let's keep going. I call the 8th mistake the helper's guilt. We've talked about dangers you can trip over, lift wrong, inhale, or cry through. But this final mistake is quieter. It doesn't start with a fall or a photograph. It starts with love, with kindness, with doing everything for everyone else until there's nothing left for you. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Let me tell you about Lena, a 74-year-old grandmother from Flagstaff, Arizona. She's the one the whole family relies on. The one who keeps her freezer full for surprise visits. The one who still drives to check on her neighbor with arthritis. The one who never says no, even when her own knees ache or her back stiffens from sleep. Lena's home was full of stuff she meant to get to soon. The garage with her late husband's tools. The closets full of her grown children's old boxes. The living room corner that quietly gathered mail, gifts, and old decorations that never made it back to storage. She walked past it all every day, making mental notes. Next week, when things calm down. Maybe after I help Sarah with the baby. Once my church committee finishes the bake sale. But the weeks never calmed down. There was always someone else who needed her more. Always another favor, another ride, another project. And in the process, Lena's own safety fell further and further down the list. Until one evening, she tripped on a stack of books by the front door, ones she had moved aside weeks ago, meaning to sort them later. She landed hard. Nothing was broken, thankfully. But her daughter, who had come over for dinner, looked around the room and said gently, "Mom, it's too much. You don't have to do everything for everyone all the time." That was the moment it hit her. Lena's house wasn't cluttered because she was lazy. It was cluttered because she'd been choosing everyone else's needs over her own for years. She'd been pouring from a cup that hadn't been refilled in ages. And I want to say something to you now, if you see yourself in that story. It is not selfish to put your own safety first. It is not wrong to say, I need to make my space work for me now. You don't owe anyone your energy 24/7. You don't have to justify why today, finally, it's your turn. Helper's guilt is real. So many seniors feel it. We say yes out of love, out of habit, out of fear that if we stop helping, we stop being needed. But what if the greatest help you could offer your family is simply staying well, staying safe, and staying in your home longer because you finally made time for yourself? So if you've been putting off decluttering because you're always doing things for others, I want to give you permission, right now in this moment, to put yourself first. Not because you're abandoning anyone, but because you're honoring the life you've built and the space that holds it. If that resonates with you, tell me in the comments. What's the one area in your home that's been waiting for your attention? Not your kids, not your grandkids, not your church groups. Yours. I want to know. After hearing all 8 of these mistakes, I hope you're starting to see that this isn't just about clearing space. It's about protecting your life, your breath, your balance, your heart, your peace of mind. Decluttering in your 60s, 70s, and 80s isn't like it was in your 30s. You're not just managing objects, you're managing your energy, your safety, your emotions, your memories. And every single decision you make, whether it's climbing into the attic, pushing a bookshelf, or opening an old envelope, deserves care and thoughtfulness. Because the seniors who thrive into their later years aren't the ones who muscle through and ignore the warning signs. They're the ones who pause, who ask for help, who recognize that strength looks different now and that slowing down isn't giving up, it's growing wiser. Maybe you've seen a piece of your own story in Eleanor, or Nancy, or Joyce. Maybe your attic's waiting, or your basement, or a drawer full of papers tied to a past you haven't quite been ready to face. Wherever you are in your journey, remember this: your home should support your life, not threaten it. By avoiding these 8 mistakes, you're not just decluttering. You're giving yourself the chance to stay in your home longer, to move with more freedom, to breathe more easily, and to wake up every morning knowing you're safe in your space. So if this video helped you today, even just a little, please take a moment to like it. It helps more seniors find this kind of practical, heartfelt advice. Share it with someone you love, someone who might be facing these same choices alone. Our last decluttering video got 250,000 views. Let's get this to 1 million by showing the rest of the world what mistakes they are making while trying to declutter. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next conversation. We're building a gentle, honest, and supportive community here. One story, one reminder, one safer home at a time. And now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had a close call while decluttering? A moment where something small turned serious, or something emotional caught you off guard? Share your story in the comments. You never know who you might be helping by speaking up. You're not alone, you're not behind, and it's never too late to make your home a little safer and your life a little lighter. Until next time, take care of yourself, gently, patiently, and with the same kindness you so often give to others.